One invisible financial line cost a realtor $18,000 in 30 days. The trigger was a $6,000 decision most people would call reckless. Most people think losing money comes from bad decisions. In reality, it comes from crossing invisible lines without realizing it. Miss the line by a few $1,000s and you don't just earn less. You trigger consequences that compound quietly. Here's the core story. A realtor earns a $7,000 commission. The default move is celebration, dinners, a weekend trip, something that feels deserved. Instead, she considers redirecting $6,000 back to the client who generated the deal. No guarantee, no contract, just probability. It feels uncomfortable. That's why most people don't do it. At first glance, it looks reckless. 30 days later, that single move produces $24,000 in new commissions through referrals. An $18,000 gap created by positioning. Wealth isn't built by bold moves. It's built by avoiding the one bad outcome that wipes you out. That's the frame for everything in this video. The $6,000 wasn't generosity. It was a capped bet. Downside, fixed at $6,000. Base case, nothing happens. Upside, referral chains. One rule matters. Cap the downside before you chase the upside. Most people see $6,000 as spending. Skilled operators see it as installing guardrails. You're not buying gratitude. You're buying guardrails. Guardrails are boring until the road turns. Now widen the lens, because this invisible line problem shows up everywhere. In 2026, one small income move can make up to 85% of your Social Security taxable. If you are within $5,000 of that threshold, this matters. People get confused because they mix two lines that punish you differently. There's the formula layer, how income is calculated and taxed. Then there's the threshold layer, the line where treatment changes. The formula can stay the same, cross the threshold and the outcome jumps. There are also two separate limits: personal survival limits, your capital and relationship exposure limits, revenue tied to one source. Don't mix them. Here's how thresholds create double penalties. First scenario, the controlled case. A retiree manages withdrawals carefully. They stay just under an income threshold. Their Social Security remains partially untaxed. Medicare premiums stay standard. Nothing dramatic happens. Same rules. Lower damage because the line wasn't crossed. Second scenario, a line crossing case. Another retiree takes a slightly larger IRA withdrawal, just enough to cross the threshold by a few $1,000s. Now, up to 85% of Social Security becomes taxable. That extra income also pushes them into a higher Medicare or MA bracket. Two separate systems, one small move, two penalties. This is threshold stacking. One step forward, two bills arrive. Same rules, different damage. The pattern is simple. The line stays fixed. Your distance to it changes. Now bring that back to the realtor. The $6,000 decision wasn't about kindness. It was about changing position relative to a volatility threshold. Cold prospecting is volatile. Referrals reduce variance. Volatility, not laziness, destroys income. Picture two commission models. Advisor A relies on cold outreach, 40 hours to close a deal, unpredictable conversion, wild monthly swings. Advisor B relies on referrals, 8 hours to close, higher trust, smoother pipeline. Same commission, same intelligence, different variance, same effort level, different outcome because volatility changed. If both close 5 deals a year, Advisor A spends 200 hours, Advisor B spends 40. That's 160 hours recovered. Assign $100 per HR of opportunity cost. That's $16,000 in hidden capital freed up. That's before accounting for stress, rushed decisions, and higher error rates when income swings. Same rules, different damage. Now add tension to the generosity model, because this is where people lose discipline. Strategic generosity works only with constraints. Without constraints, it is expensive optimism. Here's the framework. Test 1. Does the math work? Expected value must clearly exceed cost. Test 2. Can the loss hurt you badly? Cap exposure at the lower of 15% of last year's commissions or 20% of liquid capital, whichever protects survival first. Test 3. Could you explain it calmly if questioned? If you would hesitate explaining it to a regulator, partner, or spouse, it's out. Separate these clearly. Personal survival limit, how much you can lose without destabilizing yourself. Relationship exposure limit, how dependent you are on one revenue source. Confuse those, and you misprice risk. Apply the tests to the $6,000 case. Math clears $6,000 risk for a potential multi-deal pipeline. Loss capped within survivable capital range. Transparency passes, no deception, no hidden terms. That's calculated positioning. Now stress test the logic in a different industry. A manufacturer is late on a shipment. This is the danger zone. Most companies stall, soften the truth, or wait until asked. Instead, they call immediately and offer a $1,000 concession up front. Why? Because the relationship is worth $200,000 a year. Small visible cost. Large uncertainty reduced. If they delay and the client reacts first, penalties escalate. Legal risk appears. Reputation damage appears. The downside is no longer capped. Two systems again, contractual penalties and reputational penalties. Cross both thresholds and the cost multiplies. Same rules, different damage. Now shift to demand risk. A young man wants to open a shop. Unknown landlord. Unknown rent stability. Unknown demand. Three unknowns. Most people call pushing forward courage. Often it is unpriced variance. Instead of guessing, he talks directly to at least 30 potential customers before signing anything. Hours of conversations feel slow, but compare the downside. Delay costs weeks. Failed lease costs years. Here's a simple rule. Do not commit more than 20% of available capital unless you have validated demand directly through real conversations. Separate the layers. Capital at risk, survival threshold, market validation, probability threshold. Different layers. Don't mix them. One rule repeats. Measure your distance to the line before you move. Now compress everything back to the original $6,000 move. People obsess over the spend and ignore the ratio. 4-to-1 upside with capped downside does not require brilliance. It requires avoiding the one scenario that wipes you out. Referrals are like owning a bridge. Cold prospecting is swimming. Swimming works until the current changes. A bridge reduces variance. Variance is where most financial damage hides. Now invert the lesson to avoid mistakes. Strategic generosity fails when probability is guessed, not observed. Spending creeps beyond 10% of income from that relationship. Correlation is mistaken for causation. Or 3 cycles pass with 0 incremental return. If capital does not answer to arithmetic, stop. Discipline is not about boldness. It is about staying clear of thresholds that trigger nonlinear consequences. Small move, crossed line, different world. Here's the entire video in one line. Wealth isn't built by bold moves. It's built by avoiding the one bad outcome that wipes you out. Before we close, ask yourself, are you within one bad month of crossing a financial line, an income threshold, a tax bracket jump, an IRMAMA increase, a capital exposure limit, or overdependence on a single client? If you are within one bad month of crossing a financial line, type line. In the next breakdown, I will show you how to calculate your exact buffer before volatility hits. And for the original case, would you deploy the $6,000? Comment deploy or hold. Bold looks impressive. Risk control keeps you in the game long enough to get rich. Choose carefully. Markets don't punish laziness. They punish sloppy math.